Hey guys, it's Chris. I want to thank you for downloading this episode of the SoxProspects.com podcast. As I'm recording this intro, it is Thursday, November the 2nd, and I just wanted to record this to run at the beginning because when Ian and I recorded this episode, it was Sunday the 29th, and a couple of events hadn't happened yet that factored into what we discussed on the show. So those parts are maybe a shade outdated right now, but what we discussed is still relevant. So the first is that the Red Sox announced today some of their major league coaches for the coming season, and that includes former Portland Sea Dogs manager and now third base coach and infield instructor Carlos Febles. He is up at the major league club now, and that's something that we discussed as a possibility on this episode. The other thing is that, and as part of a number of moves today, the Red Sox added Bryce Brentz and Williams Jerez to the 40-man roster. Brentz is a guy that we talk about on this episode, assuming he's going to be a free agent, but turns out that won't be happening quite yet because the Red Sox added him to the roster today. So we hope you enjoy this episode, and thanks for downloading.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this official podcast for the number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox farm system on the web. This is the SoxProspects.com podcast. It's episode number 131. Thank you for listening, and thank you for staying with us after yet another hiatus. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of SoxProspects.com, coming to you from the Sox Prospects Mid-Atlantic offices here in our nation's capital. Firefly the Cat is on my lap, and the SoxProspects.com director of scouting, Ian Cundall, is on the line. As always, Ian, we're back, man.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's
been a minute.
Good to be back on the airwaves or
whatever
internets.
These are. Yeah. I probably owe a little bit, well, not a little bit. I owe an apology to all you guys. We were set to record on a Friday night about a month ago before I was set to go away for a week. And work, travel, personal life, a confluence of factors unrelated to the website, frankly, have kept us from recording. I think I canceled that one literally hours before we were going to record. But we found a little bit of time here on a Sunday night. It's the 29th of October.
So hashtag blame Hatfield.
Hashtag blame Hatfield. You know, like I say, we have day jobs as much as we would love to do this full time. And, you know, priorities got to be where priorities are. I've been traveling like crazy. But making some time for y'all here on a Sunday night. The World Series is in full swing. We are tied at 2 there. The Red Sox have been eliminated from the postseason since we last talked.
And fired their manager and hired a new manager.
Right. Things are happening. The fall and winter leagues are in full swing. So we've got a lot to talk about. It's our season wrap-up episode. Some quick housekeeping. You can support the podcast in a couple ways. First, subscribe and rate and review. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and YouTube. Subscribe so you know when a new episode is up, and give us a 4 or 5-star rating and a nice review to help us get in some new ears. We'd appreciate it. You can also support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. You donate a certain amount per episode, $1, $2, $5, and there are certain rewards based upon how much you donate per episode. We always want to thank our $5 contributors here on the show. And that's Sox Signatures, Cody Pimentel, Mundell Martin, Kirby Miller, Gerardo Iantosca, Kyle Costigan, Tyler Woodrow, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Tim Ware, Scott Klebe, Hurricanes 1, Bill Stanton, and Deb Kendall. Thank you to all of them and to all of our other contributors on patreon.com. We love getting your emails. We've got a couple for this episode, but send your questions, send your thoughts, send what you want to hear about to podcast@soxprospects.com. You can also hit us up on Twitter. I'm at SP Chris Hatfield. Ian is at Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. And there's, of course, the main site's Twitter account. That's at Sox Prospects. Very easy. Ian, news since we last hopped on here, I guess transaction-wise, some re-signings, some guys re-signing to minor league deals. This is kind of burying the lead a bit, but we'll just hit them really quickly. Among those who are headed for minor league free agency who have re-signed are infielder Diener Lopez, bullpen righty Jordan Weems, let's see who else, outfielder Jeremy Barfield, right-hander from the Pawtucket Red Sox Marcus Walden, and outfielder for the Pawtucket Red Sox Anuri Tavares. Those guys have all re-signed before even hitting minor league free agency, showing that, well, basically that the team made re-signing them something of a priority. All those guys are priorities for different reasons. You look at a guy like Lopez, really his value as an organizational guy who can play any position in the infield and play it well, not necessarily a prospect type. Weems, former third-rounder, is a catcher who's a guy who is converting to pitching in relief. Pitched this past season in Salem and Greenville, I believe. And he was at Salem at the end of the year. Yeah, he split the season between the two. It was mostly in Salem. Promising, got some things to work on. Made sense for him to stay where he was. They like Walden a lot in Pawtucket as kind of a swing man who gets righties out. But Barfield and Tavares are really kind of the two big ones, Ian, I think, as we kind of talked about a little bit before we started recording. Barfield snuck into the final season rankings at number 60, I believe. Or no, I think we actually moved him up a bit. He snuck into the final rankings at number 56. He'll be an outfielder in Pawtucket next year. And Tavares, as we've talked about in the past, was a Rule 5 draft pick last season of the Baltimore Orioles. He's Rule 5 eligible again this year. Kind of interesting that they re-signed him so quickly, because if they don't add him to the 40-man, he's eligible to be selected again. But, you thought maybe they'd kind of game it so that they didn't re-sign him until after that, but they wanted to get him done quickly. Definitely kind of sets up the Pawtucket outfield situation and maybe some other things you can read in the tea leaves there.
Yeah, I think just as noteworthy as those guys coming back as who isn't on that list, then I think you were alluding to there that Bryce Brentz is not among the re-signed players right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think that was kind of the writing was on the wall after they didn't add him to the 40-man roster at the end of the regular season. So it seems, I'm going to guess it's been a mutual decision to part ways. Well, and he'll be looking for a fresh start somewhere.
Yeah,
but
all this means is they haven't re-signed him to a minor league deal yet. And as we mentioned, minor league free agency, you hit minor league free agency 5 days after the World Series ends. So in theory, the Red Sox could add Brentz to the 40-man roster and keep him at any time between now and 5 days after the World Series. And we've gotten some questions about that, both on, or at least I have, I don't know whether you have or not, both on Twitter, and it's come up on the forums at SoxProspects.com. Like you said, I think the writing's on the wall, man. I think if they had wanted to keep him, they would have added him in September. We've talked about it in the past. Brentz is playing in Mexico right now, not doing great. He's hitting
home runs.
Wow. Okay. He's hit a lot of those since I last looked. He has 5 home runs in 12 games. He's hitting 212, 305, 519. A lot of that's recent because he was at 2 home runs and hitting below 200 last I looked.
Oh, really?
So he's kind of on a tear. But, I mean, he's got 17 strikeouts and 52 at-bats. So that's not a good percentage. That is strikeouts in a third of his at-bats.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
With 7 walks. So, hey, he's hitting them in there going out, I guess. But, I think it makes a lot of sense for him. The way I put it on Twitter to someone who asked recently, would you re-sign as an outfielder like him who is out of options with an organization that has this outfield?
No, I mean, that's the thing. There's...
I'm not saying he's going to get it. He's probably not going to get anything more than a non-roster invite, but that said, he's got a much better chance at contributing to a different team. And this is a team that after he hit 30 home runs in the regular season didn't add him to the September roster, which, he in interviews was very diplomatic about it, said he didn't hold a grudge or anything, but why on earth would you re-sign with the Red Sox if you were him?
Exactly. I mean, and I think people, or at least I sometimes forget that he's been around since 2010.
Yeah.
Like he's already 28 years old, I think. Mm-hmm. Like it's at some point, you just gotta make a move. And I do still think there's a major league future in there. Mm-hmm. I just think that, as you said, it's probably not with the Red Sox.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about fall winter, or should we talk about Farrell and Alex Cora first?
We should probably do that. Just get that out of the way. So
the Red Sox fired John Farrell, and basically the rest of the coaching staff, except for the bullpen coach, Dana Levangie, who is coming back.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. Everyone's gone. I mean, and the Cubs have already hired. Who'd they get? They got Butterfield and Chili Davis.
Butterfield and Chili Davis are going to the Cubs in the same roles they held with the Red Sox, and Carl Willis is gone to Cleveland to be their pitching coach.
To replace Mickey Callaway, who's now the manager of the Mets.
Yep, exactly. So some of those guys are already gone. Vic Rodriguez still technically out there. Who else? Anyone else? I'm trying to think from the major league. I guess Ruben Amaro technically is still out there.
Yeah.
I guess he interviewed with the Phillies, didn't he?
I think so.
As did Farrell. But neither of them is getting that. Farrell.
It's been a weird manager season.
It really has.
The Yankees fired Girardi. The Nationals didn't.
The Nationals fired Dusty Baker. Yep.
Yeah.
And they hired Davey Martinez, actually.
Yeah,
today.
And the Red Sox hired someone who's still playing.
Yeah, which is weird. They looked like they were going to try and delay until the end of the World Series, and they just didn't.
I mean, and I think it was
makes sense.
Talking about before, it was the worst kept secret. Like everyone knew he was going to be the manager, and I think it was better to do it while there was those few days off in between the ALCS and the World Series, rather than have it lingering over.
Exactly. Agreed. So, yeah, those are there. That's done. We'll see who else they bring in. They've interviewed a few guys, but probably not worth getting into here because we don't know anything about. They interviewed the Yankees' third base coach, whose name is escaping me right now. I don't know if you could look it up real quick, Ian, but they were among two teams to interview the Yankees' third base coach as a potential bench coach. So it looks like they are kind of interviewing some folks while Alex Cora is with
Joe Espada.
Thank you, Joe Espada. Also,
he's a Puerto Rican professional baseball player.
Well,
so I wonder if he knows Cora, and he's the same age as Cora. I'm assuming he knows Cora.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Cora is telling the Red Sox who he wants. I mean, Cora from being here would have known Levangie. So he would have said, I want Levangie to stick around.
I think the interesting thing to me is if any of the minor league coaches will move up to the major league staff.
Yeah.
And I think the one that I believe, I want to say it's Tim Britton has mentioned it. Mm-hmm. But
I've gotten questions
Twitter,
about this on Twitter too. Yep.
Yeah, they need an infield coach to replace Butterfield because Devers needs someone to work with him, basically. Mm-hmm. You need a Devers coach, more or less. And in terms of infield coaches, they actually have a couple pretty good ones in the high minors, in Carlos Febles and Bruce Crabb. Yep. And so I wonder if Febles is going to get the job, which is who Britton mentioned as, I don't know what it would be, but
we should add Febles spent the past season as Portland's manager.
Yeah.
Very well regarded by the organization for his work. He's moved up the system pretty quickly. I'm bringing up, let's see, Wikipedia is never wrong. So Febles, he started as a coach down in Lowell in 2007, moved up to, I didn't even realize, Lancaster in 2008.
Oh, yeah.
And then was with the Salem Red Sox in 2009 and 2010. Those were all hitting coach positions. He then went back to Lowell in 2011 to manage the Spinners, went up to the Greenville Drive in 2012 and 2013, spent 2014 and 15 with the Salem Red Sox, and then he spent 2016 and 17 with the Sea Dogs. So he has been a guy who's been around for a little while now in this system. Crabb has been a coach with the Red Sox for a while now. He was a coach even before that in the Rangers system and in the Cubs system even before that. He started with the Cubs system in 95, then went to the Rangers from 98 to 04. He joined the Red Sox in 05 as the hitting coach for the Wilmington Blue Rocks, who were the high A team before Lancaster. He became the Spinners manager in 2006, was the field instructor from 2007 to 2009 in the system, went back to being the Lowell manager in 2010, moved up to Salem in 2011, back to Lowell in 2012, and was with them in 2013, and that's where this. Then he became a coach with the Paw Sox in 2014, and has been there since as kind of basically an infield coach with them, along with Kevin Bowles being the manager. You remember it was kind of a weird situation where he got promoted and no one had gone away in Pawtucket. But, he has been in the system for a while as well. Like you say, I think it's maybe a little bit more likely that it's Crabb, given that he is a little higher on the ladder. But that's
the one thing,
Go ahead.
Febles, the bonus I would say, though, is that part of the reason why that Devers was staying in Portland for as long as he did was they wanted him working with Febles at third base. Because they looked at him as one of the better infielder instructors in the organization. And I wonder if just also the idea of, obviously Devers is going to be, 21 next year, playing a full season in the big leagues.
Yes.
Having someone like Febles who has played, he played in the big leagues before. He knows the ropes, and he's been with Devers along the way. I think, did he manage him in Greenville too? I'm trying to remember.
He would have, yeah, because he was there when we were there. I just think I remember.
So he's moved along the system.
No. Oh yeah, no, I'm thinking of Crab. Yeah, he was there.
You're thinking of Crab. Yep. Febles has moved along the system with Devers. He's from the Dominican Republic also. So there's a lot of parallels there that might, some familiarity might be good as they try to, work on Devers' defense, which, as we saw this year, is something he definitely needs to work on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And then also another guy that I thought about for the Major League coaching staff was Rich Gedman, who has gone through the system very quickly as a hitting coach. And who they also apparently really like. He became a Spinners hitting coach in 2011, went up to Salem in 2012, went to the Sea Dogs in 2013, and he went up to Pawtucket at some point. It's not in the Wikipedia article. I'm trying to remember if it was last year or not, or the year before. But he's been the hitting coach in Pawtucket for at least I think 2 seasons. But at any rate, doesn't matter. I know they really like him. I wonder if they might promote him as a guy who also would be familiar with some of the younger guys on the team as well as a hitting coach and knowing what's worked for them in the minors and maybe helping to bring that to them in the major leagues. So it'll be interesting to see if any of those guys get promoted from the minors, even though Cora is coming from outside the organization. One other thing I've seen that I don't think I mentioned, I've seen questions about whether Joey Cora would be joining the Red Sox coaching staff. He's currently a coach in Pittsburgh, but I read today that he will not be doing so. He's coming back to Pittsburgh next year as well. I think he was like the first base coach or third base coach with the Pirates.
Interesting. So, I hadn't even thought of that, but that would be a fair connection to make.
Given that they're brothers, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it would. Yes, it
exactly.
Would. Exactly.
I apologize if you hear any dings, by the way.
I hear nothing.
Stuff. Okay. There was text messages coming through on my computer, which is weird. I'm learning.
Whoa. Nope, I'm getting bitten by the cat. Okay.
All right. So I think that's manager talk.
That's manager talk. So let's move on then. Oh, the cat jumped away. I guess I pissed her off. So yeah, now that we've had that lovely tangent, what was the other topic that we were just looking at? Oh, fall and winter leagues. Thank you.
No, we finished that, I thought.
No, we didn't talk about it.
Oh, right. We talked about Brentz. That was it.
We talked about Brentz, yeah. So just looking really quickly at the fall and winter leagues. In Arizona, really kind of the big story is the success so far, I guess, of Michael Chavis, although he doesn't have the best numbers of any Red Sox in the Arizona Fall League by any stretch. Chad De La Guerra and Josh Tobias both have better numbers, but they've also played in half as many games and have half as many plate appearances as he does. Chavis is hitting .269, .316, .423 with 1 home run, but they have StatCast that's publicly available in the Arizona Fall League, and Chavis has recorded 2 of the 5 highest exit velocities. It hit I think over 110 miles per hour.
Dude rips. Circuit. I mean, when he makes contact.
Exactly. And I mean, that, to me, that doesn't surprise me at all because when he hits the ball, it goes far. It goes hard. The question is whether he can make that contact. So
I like the strikeout rate from the AFL is not bad. 9 and 52 at bats or 55 plate appearances, which is fine. So that's a good sign. But I mean, and this is a pretty good test for him. You remember that he started the year in Salem this year, and a lot of the guys he's facing are have been AA and AAA arms for the entire season or for a few years now. Mm-hmm. So this is a pretty advanced test for him, and it's good to see he's holding his own at least, which is a good sign.
Yeah, also working out at first base, so we'll have to get some reports on how he looks at first base out there. So he's working at both corner infield positions, both his normal third base as well as first. So
and I think it's noteworthy that there's been no discussion of second base, which I know a few people mentioned to me on Twitter after the Pedroia injury.
That, and I also saw it in a Callis article, I think, or MLB.com article that mentioned him as scouts say that he might be able to play some second base. I don't see it.
Yeah,
Firefly doesn't either.
Height-wise, it kind of makes sense because he's undersized. He's like 5'10", but the frame is very weird for a second baseman. He's short, stocky build, thick lower half. He's not as athletic as you'll see for guys in the middle infield. So
I wonder about turning 2 is the thing that I just can't.
And his footwork isn't great at third base. I'd be concerned about that at second base too.
Yeah.
So it's just he's a weird guy that defensively, as we've talked about a lot this season, and unfortunately or fortunately, that's something I think we're going to continue to talk about in the next year, is where his ultimate defensive home is, because if he hits, they're going to find somewhere to play him, or some team is.
Sure.
And where that is, though, is still to be determined. And I think that how he works out this offseason and what he goes into spring training next year will tell us a lot, because the time is about right to start. You got to make more determinations. When you get to Portland is when we saw them start. Betts go to the outfield. Those position changes that they've been doing in the high minors is kind of where it starts. So it'll be interesting to see what the organization decides during the exit interviews this year and for his offseason workouts, and then going into next year.
Yeah, and to me too, the thing with the Pedroia injury is he's missing the beginning of the year. Chavis isn't ready for Boston.
No,
it's a question that if he's ready for Pawtucket.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit on Twitter. I would like to see Marco Hernandez, if he's healthy, get the everyday role for a couple weeks. I would love
to see that. And maybe the injuries are something else we need to hit really quickly, because there's been 7 surgeries since the end of the season.
After they said there weren't going to be any.
Yeah.
That was my favorite thing.
Yeah, that's weird. So we'll get to that in a minute. That's a good thing to talk about. But also noteworthy is the ballad of Henry Owens, who... Oof. Well, here's the thing. You look at his overall line, and it's a 10 ERA, 9 innings, 12 hits, 10 runs, 7 walks to 9 strikeouts, but you really do have to go game by game. In his first game, he pitched into the second inning, didn't record an out in the second inning. 4 runs on 2 hits, 5 walks. He faced 9 batters and walked 5 of them with 2 strikeouts. Just an unmitigated disaster. Second start was his best start. He went 4 innings, allowed 1 run on 4 hits. You can hear that? Yeah. Allowed 1 run on 4 hits and 2 walks with 2 strikeouts. Kind of the most normal-looking line. His most recent start, he went on the 25th. He went 4 innings, didn't allow any walks, and struck out 5. Great. Also allowed 5 runs on 6 hits. So in the zone, but he's
still starting him.
Well, I think the thing is, at this point, he's starting for the AFL. He's there as their starter. I guess they could move McAvoy back into the rotation, but it seems like they're kind of committed to trying Kevin McAvoy out of the bullpen.
Just with that arm slot, he's not a starter. You know what I mean?
No, and I think this spring I would like to see him working out as a reliever. I
agree
with that arm slot. I think that's the only way you can justify keeping him around. And I see a lot of people equating he's the guy that comes up when people talk about, well, why didn't they add Bryce Brentz? And I'll say it again. He was walking people in part because he was switched to a new arm slot mid-season.
Yeah, that's not something
that's done usually.
Yeah.
Usually you send a guy to extended for a month or 2 before you bring him out to AA games. So the fact that he was even going deep into games, never mind. I mean, fine, he was walking guys, but, I think the fact that he did what he was even able to do was commendable. Maybe it's going to sound like I'm being an apologist for him, but, that's why he's still on the 40-man. If they bring him into camp next year and they're working him out in a relief role and it's still not working, then sure, then you remove him from the 40-man. But
I also think if he was right-handed, he wouldn't be on the 40-man.
True.
But being a lefty is a significant advantage in his favor, especially in a potential bullpen role, as we saw with guys like, Robbie Scott or whatever this year. So,
well, that's why they bother dropping him down, is because he's lefty.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Other relievers who are in the AFL, I mean, Ty Buttrey, 4 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, 3 walks, 5 Ks.
Stuff's been good, though, from what I've heard.
Yes, I've read that as well. The other 2 relievers are Kevin McAvoy and Bobby Pointer. I'm not going to go through their whole lines. Pointer, it's weird. He's got 6 Ks to 1 walk, but 4 runs on 6 hits, including 1 home run. The hitters are good in the AFL. McAvoy in a bullpen role has been pretty good, but 6 walks in 4 innings, so that's bad.
It's always been his problem.
Yeah. I like him better in a bullpen role. It's his first time working with it. I'd like to see him doing that next year as well, and we'll see where he goes from there. Mm-hmm. Other highlights from around the fall and winter leagues. We should mention in the Dominican, the kind of 2 top, quote, prospects, because one isn't technically a prospect anymore, from the Red Sox who are playing winter ball, are Sam Travis and Blake Swihart. Swihart is tearing the cover off the ball in the Dominican. He's hitting 455, 556, 545, 10 hits and 22 at-bats. He is hitting very well, and he's caught, what did I say before, 5 or 6 games? 6 games, I think.
6 games in the last 2 weeks, you said.
In the last 2 weeks, which is pretty much more than he did at any point after he got back into the lineup at the end of the year. So that's a good development. I'm glad to see that, and I'm interested to see what the Red Sox do with him coming into camp next year. Does he have a shot to make the roster? Who knows?
He's out of options, right?
Yeah, he is out of options and would need to make the major league roster because there's no way he's clearing waivers.
No, I think they'd like to carry him on the major league roster. I don't trust like Sandy Leon or really Christian Vasquez, and I know Christian Vasquez hit really well this year, but still, like, the best case scenario for the Red Sox would be if Blake Swihart was their long-term catcher because he is the most upside of all those guys.
Right. I agree. So
it's going to be interesting. I wonder if maybe they try to carry 3 catchers at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's going to be something. Well, Alex Cora will have some fun figuring that one out.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, think of the periods this year when there was a period from the beginning of the year until months in where one spot was occupied by Steve Selsky and then Chase Darno.
That's true.
It was a wasted roster spot. They didn't use either of them. So, and I give credit to Eric Van on the forums because he was the one who pointed that out, and he makes a good point.
I didn't even think about that. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, with a 4-man bench, who knows? I mean, you in theory could stash him. But the thing is, if you're stashing him, is he playing? If he's not playing, what the hell's the point?
And that's the thing. But the problem is you can't send him to the minors. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be an interesting situation for him. But I think it's a very good, or for the Red Sox and him. But it's a good sign that he's hitting right now and playing. Yeah,
because I mean, in an article that Chris Smith from MassLive.com put up a few weeks ago at this point, came out on October 4th. I mean, he talks about how he has to relearn to use his body. He says that he was manipulating his swing because of his feet, so that's why he wasn't swinging well. He says, now that I'm healthy, it's like I'm relearning my whole swing again.
You could tell he just didn't look comfortable at all.
Yeah, it felt like I couldn't use my body the way I wanted. It was hard to walk at times.
That's an issue.
That's a problem. A problem. So, and it's interesting to think about that in the context of Mitch Moreland playing through injury, Xander Bogaerts playing through injury, Hanley Ramirez playing through injury. Was there maybe a mentality in the organization at times last year that was hurting players, not in the necessarily physical sense, but in that a guy is hurt, maybe it's better to sit him for 2 weeks, sit him for a month, than to keep trotting him out there. And I mean, Swihart was down for a while last year, and maybe just got to a point where it's like, look, you're not going to make it worse by playing. So we don't know what the discussion is behind the scenes, but at the same time, it's just you wonder, and maybe they've learned from that. Heading into the next season. The other guy I wanted to mention was Sam Travis, who's also playing in the Dominican Republic. Not hitting nearly as well, hitting only 192, 267, 269, with 2 doubles, no home runs. He's 5 for 26. But noteworthy because he has played left field once, which is new for him. A little weird. Was your kind of take on it, Ian?
The bat just doesn't, I don't know. If it doesn't profile at first base, it's not really going to profile in left field. So, and with the Red Sox, as we kind of talked about earlier, they have an outfield already. But the one thing I just thought of this after I said that was, if they see him as a potential like Chris Young replacement, in the sense that if he can play a passable left field and he can hit left-handed pitching, then that is like, if you can play a backup first base and a backup left corner outfield and hit lefties, that could be a usable bench player for the Red Sox.
Especially because having a backup left fielder is having a backup at every outfield position when you've got Benintendi in left.
Well, which is, I mean, and obviously, Benintendi is the worst of the three. The worst of the 3 defensive outfielders there.
Quote,
but you could stick him in center if you needed to.
Well, he's a passer. He plays a fine center field.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't.
He's not Bradley and he's not Betts, but
that's
not many are.
They have flexibilities to where they could carry a guy who can only play left field as their backup outfielder. So it is kind of interesting in that regards. After thinking about it more.
Yeah, and the one thing I do kind of want to mention, though, in terms of bat profiling in left field versus, other spots on the field, is that Left field isn't the home of boppers that it used to be, though. So I don't know that I necessarily agree.
Sure.
When you look at splits in the major leagues this year by position, first base was the only position that had an OPS over 800 across the major leagues last year.
Because everyone was hitting home runs there.
Right. I mean, the position hit 962 home runs.
Exactly.
First base is really the only one. If you look at the outfield, left fielders hit worse than center fielders and right fielders last year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess part of it is, though, that, if you're a good outfielder and you're like a super athlete who's probably a good hitter, you're going to be playing center field, like Mike Trout, George Springer, guys like that.
But in theory, when you've got Mookie Betts and right, and you're playing when Travis is playing left field, in theory, in a theoretical game during the season, the center fielder and right fielder are two out of Bradley, Betts, and Benintendi.
Yeah, and if Bradley's in center, he more than will make up for any root deficiencies that Travis would take. So, yeah, it's interesting. And the more I think about it, it's not as weird as my initial reaction once we talked it out and thought about it.
I mean, it's weird in the sense that he's not the type of guy that you look at and say, well, maybe you can stick him out in left. I mean,
no, he doesn't.
Travis Shaw was a guy that I would have loved to have seen play more left field if he had the demeanor to have that kind of first, third, left bench spot.
He doesn't need it now because he's an everyday third baseman. So.
No, he had a 4-WAR season. So
yeah.
And I'll apologize to everyone for I don't know if you can you hear the meowing, the cat.
Oh yeah.
The cat has a case of the zoomies in the background. So anyway,
I'd say there's one other guy we should mention.
Okay.
Chandler Shepard.
Oh yes, in Mexico.
What is it?
Mexico.
Is it Mexico? Yeah,
and he's just starting.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's made 3 starts. In 15 and 2/3 innings, he's allowed 3 runs on 9 hits and 2 walks while striking out 15. He is probably, I would say, by far having the best winter season of any Red Sox pitcher.
I didn't even realize he was starting, but yeah, he's someone who I've always kind of liked back since he was in Lowell. What was it, 4 years ago maybe? And he had I think he had an up and down year with Pawtucket. His final line was, he had a 4 ERA, but he had 68 strikeouts in 59 innings with only 18 walks. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, it got skewed by a couple just really bad outings. And, the stuff is pretty good. He's up to the, low to mid 90s with his fastball. He's got a slider, and it's like a split change thing, I'm pretty sure. Or it might just be a changeup. I'm not sure what he calls it. But he's someone who I think still has a chance to be a big league bullpen piece. In terms of, if you compare him with someone like Austin Maddox, we saw what Maddox did when he was given a shot this year, and he looks like, sorry about that. He looks like he's going to be a piece of the bullpen at least going forward. So I wouldn't rule out Shepard being someone who is could be one of the first arms should they delve into the minors for bullpen help at some point next year.
Yeah, well, he needs to be protected.
And I think he will be.
Yeah, I think he will too. Although it's kind of interesting when you're like DFAing Kyle Martin. And he cleared, so it's the right move. I like
Shepard more than Martin, though.
Agreed. We have him ranked higher.
Correct.
Looking really quickly, I think that's basically the highlights from the fall and winter leagues.
Devers just set up a perfect segue.
Yeah, Devers hasn't. I have. Okay, well, I look forward to hearing about it.
Oh, okay, I'll tell you afterwards. Yeah.
But Rafael Devers says he might play in the Dominican this offseason. I read. Doesn't know if he will yet or not. It depends on if the team gives him permission. I know Hector Velasquez will play in Mexico, but isn't going to play until November.
Good. So, the last thing he needs is to throw more.
What's that? Yeah, exactly.
He could use a few months off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's been throwing a lot for over a few years now. So
it's been good.
Well, let's transition to whatever you thought I just transitioned to, Ian.
Well, no, you alluded to rankings, so I thought that's where you were.
Yeah, let's go there. Yeah. Okay. So fine, we will transition into the rankings. The season end rankings are up, and we had a decent amount of movement. We had the graduation of the system's top prospect and Rafael Devers. Kind of a nice little bookend.
It is, but then we look at the system and it's like...
Yeah, well, it's a nice bookend in the sense that, beginning of the year we had Benintendi graduating, and now we've got Rafael Devers graduating. The problem is that they don't leave a whole lot behind. This is the first time in a while that we don't have a single player in the system who we project as a roll 6 or higher on the scouting scale.
Which I think is fair.
No, I agree. I think that's correct. That's why we have it.
Yeah.
The top prospect is now Jay Groom, left-hander who had kind of an injury-plagued season in Greenville. Some issues on and off the field, not in his sense, but in the sense, with his father getting arrested, as we reported on, or not we reported on, but we mentioned that report. But we have him projected as a 5.5, basically, where if you look at the scouting scale as we lay it out on the website, which is the actual scouting scale, a roll 6 player for a starter is like a number 2 or 3 starter, and a roll 5 player is a back-end starter, 3, 4, 5 type guy. Groom falls somewhere in between there in our projection.
I think that's fair. He's a tough one to figure out right now.
Well, there's not a lot of sample size.
No, and there's just a wide gap between what he is now and what his potential is.
Mm-hmm.
Because
exactly.
if you told me in however long, 5 years or 6 years, he was a number 2 or a high end 3 starter, I'd believe it. If you told me he was a back end guy, I could believe that also. Mm-hmm. So it's just tough given how young he is and how little he's thrown, especially this year. That in a sense, next year he's going to be basically starting a new season as a first full pro season, given how much time he missed this year. So We'll see.
Right. So at any rate, we should mention one spot where we could have gotten a look at him and was something that affected how we wound up ranking some guys, frankly, was the fact that the club did not have a true fall instructional league this year due to the effects of Hurricane Irma. They did have players in for workouts and like inter-squads and things like that, but they did not play other teams. So
yeah, they canceled their 13 games.
One guy that it really affected for me, Ian, is I didn't really know how to rank Daniel Flores. Flores, of course, was the big money catcher out of Venezuela who the Red Sox signed this year for $3.1 million. He's currently ranked number 5 in the system. He moved up. Really was more kind of Sam Travis moving down. Travis was ranked behind, let's start at the top. It's Groom at 1, Chavis at 2. Travis had been ranked behind Chavis, but we dropped him below. The next 3 guys are Brian Mata, Tanner Houck, and Daniel Flores at 3, 4, and 5. Flores, I think, is going to be the consensus number 3 prospect in the system in other lists this offseason.
I had him at 3 too. I was just looking because we had, I think you and Mike, or Mike, you and I had 3 different 3, 4, 5 combos.
Did we?
And we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Mike went Mata, Houck, Flores. I went Flores, Mata, Houck, and you went Houck, Mata, Flores. So
fair enough.
Yeah, we were kind of all over the place with that 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, it's tough for me because you look at the 3 of those guys and it's hard to compare Flores, who we haven't seen yet.
Nope.
Who we
just heard very good things.
We've heard very good things about him. But to me, honestly, universally, draft picks and international guys, before they sign, there's the scouting report that you get, and then there's the scouting report on the player when he's playing every day as a professional.
Oh, for sure. And we know how fluid the Latin market is. I mean, you look at some of the guys they've given big money to in the past, guys like Jose Vinicio, Zhu Weilin to a sense, guys get big money. Lin's a different story because of the rules we're coming in, but Vinicio, he got $2 million?
$2 million.
And he couldn't hit.
Well, he didn't grow. He didn't grow.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I mean, you look at these guys like Daniel Flores, just turned 17.
Yeah.
9 days ago.
Oof, that's so young.
He
was born in 2001.
It's a gamble, and so the error bars are enormous. We have his range as a roll 2 to a roll 7 because who the hell knows?
Yeah, enough.
And then you get Mata, who put up great numbers in Greenville this year. We've been on him for a while, but it's not like he's some future ace. He's number 3, and I'm fine with him at 3, but he's number 3 just because it's I mean, he probably has a better chance at being a starter than Tanner Houck, who was the club's first round pick this year. But Houck, if he's a reliever, could be an impact reliever.
Yeah, and if Houck figures out in the rotation, he's probably got more upside than Mata, I would say, too.
Yes, agreed.
So
it's kind of flip a coin, honestly, for those two. For me.
I think it's probably better to look at it in terms of tiers. I think we all had Groom at 1, we all had Chavis at 2, and then 3, 4, 5 is a tier, and then I think 6 and 7 is a tier, and then 8 through 10 is a tier, maybe.
Yeah. probably.
Could
That
argue
sounds
maybe
right.
expanding it a little longer, but yeah, I think it's, when you tier them, it doesn't look as bad. But when we're talking about strictly numbers, especially compared to where the system has been these past few years, it's pretty kind of shocking to see.
Well, maybe we'll get to this now as part of our season wrap-up. One thing we were going to talk about is the state of the system. What was your take on the state of the system? And I guess we can relate it back to the rankings, because I think that really kind of ties in, for me at least. The rankings show, if you look 1 to 60 on our site, what the kind of big picture is in the system right now.
I kind of called it a work in progress. Obviously, we had some guys take big steps, or not we, the Red Sox had some guys take big steps forward this year. Chavis, Mata, I would say Alchemy did a pretty good job this season. Mike Schwarren.
Yeah, Alchemy quietly had a very good season.
Yeah,
it was
especially
weird.
At Portland. But it's at the same time, you look at who graduated. You graduated 2 of the top 5 prospects in all of baseball. And then you also in the offseason traded, 2 of the top 5 prospects in baseball. So the talent at the top is supremely thinned out. And the guys you're filling it with had good seasons, but they just don't have as much upside as the guys they're replacing. So the system obviously looks down, but it's deceptive in the sense that guys did take a step forward still.
The state of the system is different than the state of the organization. Fair?
Yes.
Right. You got me while I was chewing a piece of sandwich. But
that's fine.
For me, I kind of am there. I think the depth has kind of come back. The guys who are ranked 30, 40, 50
Yeah, it's not as bad anymore.
aren't as bad as they were May.
The one thing is there's still just a huge lack of position player talent.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a lot of bullpen arms still.
It is. And it would be good to have them to get deeper there. I think that's an area they need to work on. It's one they're starting to address, especially in the international market. Their top 3 signees were a catcher and 2 shortstops, or a catcher and 2 infielders, because they've already moved Danny Diaz to third. But
and I don't think that's a coincidence that
top 5 actually were position players, bats.
And then you go to the draft, and they took pitcher, bat, pitcher, pitcher, pitcher. Mm-hmm. And the big money guys were almost all pitchers except in the later rounds when they gave a couple bats some more money. Guys like the Dearden, Durdens, guys like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
But it's low big money. It's not like it's, $3 million bonus big money.
Exactly.
But if you look at the top, I mean, like 3, like I said, is really where you really feel it. Groom as a number 1 prospect, he's not the worst number 1 prospect they've had, I don't think, since we've started.
Still better than the Marlins system.
Oh, sure.
I mean, he's going to be probably in the 30 to 50 range,
no,
I would say.
Groom? No.
50 to 70?
I'd say around 75.
I think he sneaks in 50 to 70 just because of the upside.
Maybe.
But yeah, he probably won't. They probably won't put a top 50 prospect this year, which I can't remember the last time that happened.
Right. But he is a top 100 prospect. Chavis might be a top 100 prospect. I think he's borderline. Yeah. I think he'll sneak onto lists probably at the very back. I don't think you'll see him ranked higher than 90th. So he's kind of a 90 to 120 guy.
Yeah.
Is what I would say. And it's basically because you have to hedge that. For the same reason we've got Barfield on our list now, is in case that 30 home run pop is real, or being able to get to 31 home runs, not the pop, but you know what I mean. In case that in-game pop is real, you have to. That's top 100 power, right? If he can get to that. So
it is, but at the same time, the reason he's that low is because the defensive questions.
The defense and I think there's definitely approach questions too. I think there's hitting questions. Is the hit tool good enough to get to that power? But we've been through all that. But I think when you look at the fact that Mata, Houck, Flores is the next tier, is where it's just kind of really. I would like that tier to be 6 to 8.
Yeah, I wanted to rank Flores like 7, but then it's like you look and you're like.
No, and that's why I think Flores is the easy number 3 going to be the easy number 3 for lists that have to stand for the whole season, because he's the guy who in September, if you were right, he's the number 3 guy. If you were wrong, it's okay. Well, he was a 17-year-old Venezuelan,
and they gave him $3.1 million.
Right, that's a big number. We had some guys move around a little bit. Is there anybody you wanted to get to in kind of the top of maybe the top 15, top 20? who we debated.
I think that worth mentioning Cole Brandon and Alex Scherf.
Those
were
tough.
two guys that they were tough to rank for me, but just because, again, we didn't have instructs this year.
Yep.
But Jim Callis had a pretty good report, or he talked to Ben Crockett about what the Red Sox did do with instructs. And I think you can find that report. It's linked on the forum on the website if you want to check it out there.
MLBpipeline.com.
Yeah, but you can also get to it via the forum. And he talked about, they mentioned Scherf had a really good weird instruct season in that he was sitting in like the mid 90s and showed feel for a changeup. So that's pretty interesting. And they said, I think Crockett called him a physical specimen in the mold of Michael Kopech. So that's pretty, high praise considering Kopech is built like he's just jacked and ridiculously athletic. So sure, someone I'm very interested to see next year. And then Brandon, same thing. He didn't have the greatest season, but he showed some on base skills. I think he had 380. I mean, obviously small sample, but he had a 380, 584 OBP across the GCL and Lowell.
383.
Walked a lot and
but
stole
that's
a few
about
bases.
it. That's the problem. I mean, the lack of power was something that we heard might be an issue.
Yeah. So he's someone it'd still be interesting to see because, as we talked about a few minutes ago, they just don't have any position player prospects, and especially in the outfield. After Brandon, the next best outfield prospect is probably, I don't know, like Lorenzo Cedrola in terms of guys in the low minors. Like, it's not very good. So,
I mean, do you count Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, it's Lynn if you're. I was just looking at minors, but yeah, it's not great. So, those guys were two I think were worthy of mention, and they both snuck into the top 10. I think for me it was because of upside. I don't know what you thought, but
yeah, it's definitely upside because you look at the guys who come next. It's Jalen Beeks, who, it's going to look like he fell to 11, but I think that was really more us just kind of stepping back and saying, okay, this guy had a great year. He was the organization's pitcher. No, was it Beeks or
prospects?
He was the Sox Prospects Pitcher of the Year. I'm trying to remember.
Was the org one.
Was Schwerin the org one? Okay.
I'm positive.
Okay, so Mike Schwerin, who's at number 9 right now. But with Beeks, it's just had a great year. Definitely moved up. Definitely put himself in the conversation for things like spot starts. A lot of people still think he's a reliever.
It's just not a lot of upside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Schwerin has more upside. Scherf has way more upside. I've said on here, I think if anyone's going to displace Jay Groom as the number 1 pitching prospect in the system next year, it'll be if Scherf comes out next year, goes to Greenville, and shoves as a 19-year-old. Or actually, will he be 19 or 20?
Yeah.
He's 19 now, but maybe.
Now he'll be 20.
Yeah, my internet's being
He'll be
wonky.
20 because he turns. I heard you're cutting out. He turned 20 in February, so. Or he turns 20 this coming February. So, yeah, he'll be a 20-year-old, but still, it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I would say after that, like Chatham and Dahlbeck in the 10 to 15 range, I still have hope, but it was kind of lost seasons for both of them.
Yeah,
so,
it was.
Again,
the interesting quote, if you want to read that from Crockett. The interesting quote that he had in that Callis article, paraphrasing, but he was basically saying it was an interesting season in that Schwerin was really the only one of their 2016 top 5 picks who was in the organization and pitched a full season, given that Groom, Chatham, and Dahlbeck all basically had lost seasons due to injury, and they traded Sean Anderson. So very weird in that respect to have that happen to a club. So, those were two guys who Dahlbeck, I think, was the guy that we had potentially had the most upside of anybody who they drafted last year, except for Groom, given what he did in Lowell in 2016. It really did something that we had never seen anybody do there.
No, and his swing just got all messed up this year. I don't know how much was the hamate injury, and we saw with Chavis how much a hand injury can impact someone. So I still have some hope there, but it seemed like he reverted back to his college, season where he was just striking out every at bat, and that's even if it doesn't matter how much power you have, if you can't make contact.
Yeah, even at the end of the year when he was hitting better in the season's final month, he was still striking out in like a third of his at bats, I think.
Yeah, he ended up with 13 home runs in a pretty poor season for him. Yeah, so the power is real, but it's just, can he make enough contact?
Yeah, it's like a 180, 190 ISO. So, I mean, the pop's there, and he started hitting home runs at the end of the year, but he definitely was still striking out a ton. And Chatham literally missed the whole season. He played in one game, basically. And then, one game in Greenville, and he played rehab games in the Gulf Coast League.
Yep.
It's interesting. To me, so kind of some of the interesting guys to rank, again, Danny Diaz, the third baseman who they gave a $1.6 million bonus to out of Venezuela. Would have been nice to see him and Anthony Flores, who bows at number 38 right now, signed for a $1.4 million bonus. Two infielders who we haven't seen yet. Would have been good to see them. But like you said, it's a lot of relief pitchers. If you look, starting at number 21 on, we have a first page ranks 1 to 20. The second page, I like to call it, of the website, ranks 21 through 60. And if you look, 21 Austin Maddox, 25 Ben Taylor, 26 Yohan Martinez, 29 Chandler Shepard, 30 Zach Schellinger, 31 Bobby Pointer. All relief pitchers. Ty Buttrey at 35. Trey Ball at 40 is starting, but you could say he's a reliever. I mean, he's a reliever. They haven't moved yet. It's, they're, quote, deep with relief pitching prospects who could help at the major league level, but they're, quote, deep there in part because they're not deep anywhere else.
Yeah, they don't have any starters. So.
They don't have any starting pitching. They're not deep at any bat position, really. Nope. If you look at it, with Devers graduating, yes, you've got Chavis, but with Dahlbeck taking a step back this year, there's no position where you in the lineup, I guess is what you could call it, where there are multiple players who you look at as having potential futures starting in the major leagues.
Yeah, especially too. I mean, you could maybe argue first base, but if you're going to cheat, you could say first base. If Chavis is going to end up there, you have Ockamy and then
Travis
you have
and Ockamy, maybe, but
still, like, I'm not sold on Travis as an everyday guy, and that's why I had Ockamy ahead of him in
we talked about that too. I mean, the thing with Ockamy to me is, it feels like he should be a lot younger, is more younger a thing?
Younger, you were right the first time.
Well, he should be more younger than Sam Travis than he is what I'm trying to say. So
yeah,
Travis,
he's only like 2 years younger, right?
Yeah, Travis is August 93 birthday, and Ockamy is an October 95 birthday. So it's a true 2 years between them, even though they were drafted in 2014 as a college guy and a high school guy.
Yeah, so Ockamy was just old for a high school guy, and Travis was young for a college junior.
Guy.
Yeah,
exactly. So, you look at it, and Ockamy was 22 this year in Salem and Portland. Had a good year across the two levels. To me, the thing was I didn't realize that he basically put up more or less the same line in Portland that he did in Salem, which was interesting to me. I didn't realize that until we really went through this exercise, and it's like, well, he's doing what he can do. I mean, he's not breaking out in a Michael Chavis sort of way, and we'll get into breakouts later, but he's a guy who just went out there and took walks, waited for his pitches, and, hit at a decent clip, and he's got pop in there, and we know that.
But that's kind of what he is, I think, and it kind of hurts him in that sense that it's not flashy, He's not a guy who's going to go out there and hit 330, slug 550, 600 like Chavis did this year. Not the hitting 330 part, but he's just a guy who's going to go out there, he's going to grind at bats, he's going to work the pitcher, he's going to walk a ton, he's going to strike out a lot too, and he's going to hit home runs. And, he's probably going to hit like 260 to 280.
And he's not going to play on the field.
No.
He's a first
So
base
it's like,
only.
it's a weird, it's just an interesting profile in that it doesn't really jump out unless he's someone, it looks better when you see him in the ballpark.
Right.
It's a more useful player, I would say, on the field than the stat line indicates.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it.
Especially because his ability to work counts and is legit. Like, he's someone who will go and, in 4 at-bats, he's going to see 20, 25 pitches.
Yeah, although we've also heard... Yeah, we've also heard there's potential issues with him being maybe a little too passive, but I kind of wonder how much of that is, just kind of assuming, basically, based on the walks.
Yeah, and I think in the low minors, though, a part of that, or not low minors, but minors in general, there will be situations where hitters have a better knowledge of the strike zone sometimes than umpires do. And umpires will make some calls that are pretty borderline, where it was pretty clearly a ball, but you're going to get a strike because maybe the pitcher actually hit his spot, even though the catcher was set up 6 inches off the plate or whatever.
Sure.
And that's something that I know I've seen Ockamy run into that before, where he'll get called out on, a fastball that was clearly off the plate, but the umpire's given the pitcher 6 inches. So, stuff like that will happen. Yeah. So he's someone who's going to be interesting to me. And as you said, his final line, it jumped on me too. I didn't realize he ended up hitting 275. So that's still pretty good for his first exposure to Double-A.
He's a guy I'll be a lot more excited about after I see him in Pawtucket. I think, because I want to see how he does at that level facing former Major League pitchers.
Correct.
I'm trying to think, is there really anyone else to talk about in the rankings? I know there were players we debated, but it's some of the same debates we've been having.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a lot of hedging in the 30 to 40 range, like guys like Kervin Suarez, Pedro Castellanos, guys who had pretty good seasons in the low minors, got a bump, mainly just as we talked about the lack of position player depth. It pushed them up a little higher for me.
Mm-hmm. And Castellanos getting the bump up to Greenville to close out the season too was something in his favor as well.
Yeah, because something seemed to have changed with him, because I think it was Ben Crockett talks about how his swing was extremely short to the ball, and that was directly opposite of what I've seen before. And
what we saw in spring training.
What we saw in spring training, which we checked with video that we had from spring training, which showed him looping, like loopy swing. And so something had to have changed there. But again, obviously, no instructs, couldn't see him. So he's someone I'm interested to see next year. And I will say I kind of like the 40 to 60 more than I have in the past.
Yes.
I do think there's some interesting guys there. Nick Duran, who I've talked about a lot and we debated pretty heavily. But also guys like Tyler Esplin, who showed some legit power in the GCL this year. Aaron Perry, who didn't pitch, but he got some money and he seems to have a live arm. Santiago Espinal, who had a sneaky good year in Greenville as an infielder. Juan Florentino, same thing. Hildemar Urqueña, same thing. So there's a little bit of upside there, and same with some of the guys who just missed, like the Durdens. So it's getting better, as I kind of mentioned earlier. So we'll see. It's gonna be interesting next year, because they don't have a lot of trade chips. They don't have a lot. If they traded any of their top guys, they're not getting very much back. So
no,
they need some guys to take a step forward next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, we keep hearing Giancarlo Stanton thrown around, and it's like a trade for Giancarlo Stanton is going to start with one of the major league outfielders.
And you don't do that.
Well, you can, but there's a question about how much you have to give up in addition. Yeah. If you're trading Jackie Bradley straight up for Stanton, sure, I'll do that.
You can't do it. They can't afford him.
Well, but they're already going. I mean, maybe we should talk a little bit about this too. Maybe we've alluded to it in the past, but with MLB trade rumors, arbitration projections came out, and if you take those as gospel, the Red Sox are already projected to have a $208 million payroll next year before they add anyone. Before they sign J.D. Martinez or Eric Hosmer or anyone like that. And this does not include Rusney Castillo, does include the Pablo Sandoval contract, but this is where they're potentially hurt down the road by having not much left in the minor leagues, because they don't have much coming up that's going to offset cost of guys that are now hitting arbitration, like Bradley, Betts, Bogarts, guys like that.
Yeah.
It's going forward, how they manage this, it's going to be dicey. They're going to go over the competitive balance tax the next 2 years. And again, we'll get into this in maybe a little bit more detail during the off season, but this is why you need young guys. And if you're going to trade for Stanton, you are completely punting on the CBT for the near future, because he's making $30 million. Yeah,
and it's for the next 12 years or whatever.
He has an opt out though. He has an opt out after a couple of years. Yeah. So
still,
it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess let's transition in. We wanted to do, as part of our kind of season wrap up, some awards and some final thoughts, I guess, to go all Jerry Springer here on the 2017 season. But let's start with some of our awards. The first set of awards, Ian, we want to do hitter and pitcher of the year, and this is on-field hitter and pitcher of the year, not necessarily prospect hitter and pitcher of the year. For the website, with the website's awards, let me just go through. No, let's just go one at a time. Our player of the year was Rafael Devers, and I think this is kind of, I guess it's technically on-field. We went on-field with this, and the site went Rafael Devers. The Red Sox went Rafael Devers for their minor league player of the year as well. Just what he was able to do in the minors, even before he got to the major leagues. He hit 300, 369, 575 over 77 games. as a 20-year-old in Portland and Pawtucket. And then especially when you factor in what he did in Boston, it's not close. He hit 268, 319, 449 in 52 games. The defense is an issue that's going to need to come up, but certainly a player worthy of that award. Ian, who would you pick as the system's hitter of the year?
I took out Devers' major league time and didn't count it when I was deciding, and for that reason I went with Michael Chavis. He just had, if Devers had played the whole season in the minors, he obviously would have been the clear choice for me. But I think what Chavis did this year, coming off the injury, going out, hitting 31 home runs between Salem and Portland, becoming a StatCast darling with his exit velocities, yep. And showing improvement with the approach. He only struck out 113 times this year, walked 39, it was a career high in walks, and in terms of the number of plate appearances, it was a low for strikeout percentage. So that was just all encouraging to me, and I'm not going to take into account defense, just hitting straight. And for me, that was enough to push Chavis slightly ahead of Devers, just because he spent the whole season in the minors and Devers didn't.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough. I'm with you. That's a great choice with Michael Chavis. He led the system in runs created. I think he led them in any number of categories. So for sure, a good call there. For me, I guess if we're going, there's another number of guys you could go with, but I'm going to be a little bit contrarian here and add the fact that if you factor in the amount of time he was in the system, Jeremy Barfield hit 28 home runs in 95 games. No, but if you're just going on field, if you're not going prospect status, he had 293, 368, 589. In 95 games, he had 28 home runs. That's only 3 behind Chavis, who played in 30 more games and had 120 more at bats. That's not even plate appearances. He raked, man.
He did.
It's kind of crazy to see how he went from just a whatever indie guy signing.
He was a pitcher a couple of years ago.
He was a pitcher a couple of years ago because I think it was the A's made him. He didn't want to. And in fact, that's part of the reason why he wound up in indie ball, I think, is because he was just not, his heart wasn't in the pitching. And then they let him go back to hitting, and then they just eventually cut him. But who knows what's up there? I mean, most likely he's another Mauro Gomez, Roberto Pedagini. Who else we got? High minors guy who comes in and rakes for a year and then is never really heard from again.
Chris Marrero,
sure.
And I saw him last year, and I would say that's the likely outcome. I just don't think I don't think the bat speed's there. He ran into some fastballs, but it's just it's very stiff. He's got a good frame, but I don't see it.
All right, so let's move on, Ian. Pitcher of the year. We talked a little about this. Who's your pick for pitcher of the year going solely on-field performance?
I had Jalen Beeks.
Okay.
I was thoroughly impressed with what he did this year, and yeah.
It's a two-horse race, really. It's either Beeks or Michael Schwarin. The two had near identical lines, you could almost say. You look at ERA, Beeks has the edge, 329, 381. Schwarin's got the strikeout edge.
Whip was a wash.
Whip's a wash. OPS against and average against are basically a wash. Beeks got the ball on the ground more often, but age,
higher level.
Yeah, higher level, but at the same time, you could say age relative to level. Beeks was... he's only a year older, I guess. That's true.
And Beeks was 24 in AA and AAA. Schwarin was 23 in the high A, so...
I guess. September 94 versus July 93, yeah, so it's only 1 year. I guess that's a good point. But, to me, Schwarin just able to getting more strikeouts gets him the edge for me.
It was either of them, and I don't think anyone else was particularly close after that.
And admittedly, maybe that's a little bit of prospect status sneaking in there to break a tie for me.
Biasness.
Fair enough. Let's look at prospect hitter and pitcher. I'll go first on this one. To me, prospect hitter, it's got to be Devers.
Yeah, I couldn't argue that.
It's just with the year he had at the age he was. It's Chavis maybe.
Yeah, no.
Got to be Devers, and we've talked about him. Prospect pitcher, who do you have there? That's kind of a little bit tougher one.
I had Brian Mata, and anytime a 17-year-old goes into Greenville and puts up the season he did, he held his own, 3.74, 1.31. Granted, the ERA and WHIP are skewed by, I think, 2 poor late season starts when obviously he was tired.
Sure.
But, he held his own as a 17-year-old in Greenville, and that's not an easy task. That's a pretty good hitter's league. That was his first, experience. He jumped directly basically from the he did jump directly from the DSL to Greenville. And anytime someone does that, that's very impressive. So for me, that was what pushed him over Schwarren, who I think is the other option.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Schwarren did throw twice as many innings, and that's significant in the sense that it also shows he can carry that load. Mata hasn't shown yet that he can carry a starter's workload. So I think there's something to that. If you're looking at it even just from the purely prospect perspective. So,
I think both are good choices.
Yes. Rookie of the year is tough because it basically has to be Hector Velasquez because they're just really, like we just said, there weren't any rookies who did anything.
No.
I'm trying to think of who else even was a rookie. I mean, Cole Brannon didn't do a whole lot performance-wise.
Scherf didn't
play. None of the J2 guys signed, and there were not really many J2 guys from last year. Actually, there were literally none because the Red Sox couldn't sign any.
So it was him, or I guess maybe Jeremy Barfield.
Well, but he's a rookie in the system, but he's played in the minors.
So if you're just going straight up rookies, then it has to be Velasquez.
Yeah, which is weird given how old he is.
But he had a very good season, and I still think he's very usable, up and down emergency. So, yeah.
He'll be around for 2 more seasons, and then he'll be not worth nearly as much when he doesn't have any options left.
Correct.
So that'll be, hey, might as well use him while you got him. Comeback player of the year, a player who, came back from some kind of adversity to this year have a great season. To me, a couple of options. Who do you have, Ian?
I'd say probably Bryce Brentz. He was
changing it on me.
Yeah, well, at first I would have said someone like Chavis, but that got vetoed. So
no, it's your pick.
All right, well, I would have said Chavis then because he didn't play last year and he was terrible. And when he did, and granted he was hurt, but still he was bad. And so to come back from thumb surgery or whatever. And have the season he did was really impressive to me. And it kind of established himself. It was the combination of coming back from being pretty much not written off, but, his stock was way down both in the game and in the Red Sox system. And to come back and establish himself as a borderline top 100 prospect and clear number 2 prospect in the system was very impressive.
Sure. For me, it is Brentz. Actually, I think I would go with Brentz here as a better option as a guy who is coming back from basically 3 years of not being a good player. But not being a good player, being basically a 4A outfielder.
Yep.
He was off the radar completely. Was he ranked entering the season? He may not have been ranked.
I think we had a few people. I think I had him ranked. I feel like Mike didn't.
Yeah, Mike hated him entering the year.
But I mean, there was reason too. I mean, he hadn't done anything, as you said, for 3 years, and he was 27. So.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, just with the year he had hitting 30 home runs. Honorable mention probably to Brian Johnson, who came back from in the offseason in 2015 getting carjacked, and last year missing most of the season due to anxiety. This year he even got hit in the face with a line drive again.
Jesus.
Which I just
can't. Yeah.
The fact that he even lasted the whole season is crazy to me.
Well, and he had a good bbig league outing. Didn't he pitch a complete game?
Complete game, big league outing. In 93 innings, he had a 3.10 ERA across a couple levels. 123 WHIP. Didn't strike too many guys out, but again, to even pitch the whole season was a accomplishment. He also dealt with some shoulder stuff this year too. So honorable mention to him. Breakout player of the year. I'll go first here for me. That is where I would go Chavis.
That's fair.
From a guy who, it depends. I mean, he qualifies for both. It's definitely both.
Yeah.
But for me, Chavis went from a guy who was a first rounder, who was going to be an afterthought, to Michael Kopech at the very least in that 2014 draft, to being a guy who looks like a first rounder now.
Yeah, he looked good.
He had a good season. I mean, you look at that draft, it's Kopech, who's gone, and then after that, it's basically Chavis, Ockamy, Travis, who is what they have from that draft right now. And then it's guys like Beeks and Chandler Shepard and Danny Mars and Kevin McAvoy.
It's a good draft.
It was a good draft. I mean, the problem is you look at, Josh Pennington is now gone too. And they also had, a couple of guys who were, they didn't really do the high bonus guy outside of the two first rounders. So that's also why that draft isn't necessarily
it's not as deep
as some other drafts are. But yeah, to me, Chavis, had the breakout to become a potential top 100 prospect. Wins it for me. How about for you?
I will say a little off the board. I would have gone Chavis also, but I would give an honorable mention to Zhu Wei Lin.
Sure,
he went from someone who I didn't think was anything more than like an org out player at best to I think he could be a big league utility player, and that's a pretty big step forward. And he got a big league call up. He ended up playing in 25 games with Boston, and if you told me that would have been the case end of the year, I probably would have said you're crazy. So I think that's a pretty good, pretty big breakout for him, even though obviously it's not to the level of Chavis. He doesn't have the upside. It's still impressive.
Right. That's fair. If you look at where they started to where they ended up, that might make that's your case for Lin, because he went from being out of the rankings completely to top 20. Whereas Chavis, I think, was probably in the teens, somewhere up to 2. But, it's kind of like, exponentially how much it matters, I guess. But those are the two guys for me as well. I think that's a very good point. I think that's about it for awards. Let's talk about some highs and lows for the system this year. Top stories. Do we want to start? Let's start bad news first. How about?
Sure.
And we'll just trade back and forth. First one I'll mention is the fact that the system is still feeling the woes of how lack of depth caused by trading for basically Craig Kimbrell and Chris Sale. Let's call it that. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, granted, you have Anderson Espinoza as well being traded for Pomerantz, so maybe add that as well. But really thinned the depth in the top of the system, and it's still pretty bad. It craters after Groom and Chavis. We've talked about it. How about you? How about you for a low?
Yeah, piggybacking off that, part of the reason the system craters is the 2015 and 2016 draft classes do not look very good. 2015, obviously, they got Benintendi at 7. But after that, Austin Rye, who can't hit, Tate Matheny, who can't hit, Jagger Rusconi, who can't stay on the field, Travis Lakins, who can't stay on the field, Ben Taylor's in the big leagues, Logan Allen was traded, Tucker Tubbs is a good pitcher, Mitchell Gonzalez is low minors or guy. Then after that, there's not a lot. And that's, 2015. And then 2016, as you mentioned earlier, they only had, of the top 5 rounds, only Schwarn pitched the entire year. They've already traded the 3rd rounder and the 6th rounder. There's just not a lot there either. So I would say that's kind of a low light for me, was that those draft classes, there's just not a lot coming from them.
That's fair. The next one I'll go with is Blake Swihart's season. We've already talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, that was a big sigh for Blake Swihart.
It was, and it was just, you wonder about his ability to get back to being the potential catcher of the future. He's doing a good job in the Dominican this winter, which is a bright spot and a lot better than I think we could have hoped for. I just wonder about his ability to carry that into next year when he doesn't have any options left.
The next one for me would be pitcher injuries. Guys like, we had Groom obviously missed a good chunk of the year. Travis Lakins didn't pitch very much this year. There were just, Neil Raudes was on the deal at one point. There's just a long list of guys who missed time with injuries, and the big ones being Groom and Lakins, which really hindered their development. So that was a little disappointing.
Yes, yeah, I hear you. Another one for me was Sam Travis, as I wrote, failing to grab the brass ring. I think they went with a temporary option at first base and Mitch Moreland, in part because they were hoping that Travis could step up as a guy who could at least man the position next year. I don't think that they expected him to be a middle-of-the-order hitter, but I think they were hoping he could at least be a guy who could man the position and hit 7th, ahead of, say, the catcher and maybe Bradley or something. And instead, he's a guy who it doesn't look like he might even be a major league starter. So that was a disappointment for me.
Yeah.
Do you have maybe one more?
I would say, I don't know if this is a low light, but the prospects they traded have all been actually pretty good.
Not all of them.
I mean, for the most part, you look at guys like you have Margot was 3 WAR this year. Logan Allen has quietly had a very good year for San Diego.
Top 20 Midwest League prospect, I believe.
Yeah. Carlos Febles in the big leagues. Travis Shaw hit 30 home runs. Mauricio Dubon had another solid year. Yohan Moncada is one of the top prospects in baseball. Kopech is arguably the top pitching prospect in baseball. You know, they traded a lot, and those guys, I mean, it's not really a low light, but it's just, it kind of makes you think like what could have been with the homegrown talent.
True, but at the same time, you've got Javier Guerra, who is basically a nipper at this point.
He was, when they traded him though, that was, we weren't very sold on him.
Sure.
I just never thought, I wasn't sure he could hit, and that's kind of what's happened. But yeah, I mean, obviously not all of them are going to hit, but they've traded a lot of talent, and you know, it's working out for those teams that have acquired it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I mean, the one last one is Anderson Espinoza, basically missing the year due to injury.
That's a low light, definitely, because Anderson Espinosa is a lot of fun to watch when he's healthy.
Right. The one thing that I was going to mention last year's draft class as well, when you mentioned it, Nick Quintana, who was the guy that they drafted in the 11th round as the J. Groom insurance, basically, if Groom didn't sign, was a freshman All-American in Arizona. So he's a guy that would have been nice to have in the system, but rather have Groom, personally.
Yeah.
So let's go with highlights then. I'll start. Rafi Devers did the damn thing.
Yeah, he's a dude. That was actually my first one, too, was third base. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, he came out and did the thing, man. He was a legit number one prospect in this system. You know, right now we kind of have an unofficial ranking of the young graduates on the front page of the website. And, I mean, he's ranked behind Betts, Bogarts, and Benintendi, but you know what? He's pretty darn close to that group.
Yeah, which is a good company to be in.
And that's a great young core to have for a team, man. That's... You know, like I said, the state of the organization is different than the state of the farm system. Yes. And I think he came up and did literally as well as you could have hoped he would do in an age 20 season.
Yes.
How about you?
I would like to, my first one would be the Greenville Drive. Mm-hmm. And it's a few things. Obviously, on the field, they won the championship, and I was really impressed with the pitching. The guys like Brian Mata, Darwinzon Hernandez, really impressed, especially in the playoffs, through some good games. And then in the bullpen, like Johan Martinez was lights out after his promotion. Mm-hmm. Guys like that. So that was nice. But I just think that having a team that, you know, a championship team is really nice. And then the Drive also were the recipient of the John H. Johnson President's Award, which is as the best team in minor league baseball or the best organization in minor league baseball. Mm-hmm. And I think just their entire season was just a really nice breath of fresh air. And both on the field and off, they had a great season. I think it deserves some recognition as one of the highlights of the system this year. For
sure. Yeah, it's a great organization down there.
And shout out to all our friends down there.
Yes,
great job this year. Congrats again.
Great organization. I'm hoping I've got a family member. My sister-in-law is getting married in Greenville in mid-May, and it looks like I will hopefully be able to catch at least one game.
It's I mean, we mentioned it before, but if anyone who's listening, you ever got a chance to go down to Greenville, it's a beautiful place, and the ballpark is fantastic, and everyone around there, it's a first class organization. Highly recommend it.
For sure. I'll just mention my next one really quickly because we've really already talked about it, but the back end depth, I think you made the point already for me. Really kind of the 40 to 60 depth on our rankings is pretty good, I think, relative to even where it's been.
Yeah.
There are a lot of guys there that could take really big steps forward next year. You know, there are guys like, I could see a future next year where Pedro Castellanos is a top 20 prospect in the system if he hits like this again, say in Greenville. Heck, he's probably a top 10 prospect if he hits like that again, like he hit this year.
We'll have to see. First base only is tough.
It is, but if he is second in the league in hitting at age, you know, how old is he? Let's see. Castellanos was 19 this year and hit 338. Over two levels, 339 in the GCL. He turns 20 in December. So next year will be his age 20 season. If he hits 330 something as a 20-year-old in the South Atlantic League, that's probably a top 10 prospect in the system. Mm-hmm. So I think the kind of back end depth was very good this year.
Yep.
What you got?
I would say the system finally showing some power is a really good sign for me. I think we've talked about a lot in the past that no one in the system used to hit home runs. And this year they did. You know, they had Devers, Chavis, Brentz, Barfield. They just had a lot of guys show some power, and that was just a nice change for me, because I'm used to, when we see the system, just they've had years where they're like the high in home runs like 15, and this year you had a couple of guys hit over 30 or get close to it. So that was a good sign, especially considering that power, as long as you can make contact, can translate, especially given the baseballs the major leagues are using right now. So it's an encouraging sign.
Quick tangent. I love the fact that like Dallas Keuchel and Justin Verlander are coming out and going ahead and saying, yeah, the baseballs are definitely juiced. I don't care what Rob Manfred is saying.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Yes. Yes, it is.
My last positive I was going to say, Ian, is that the fact that the Red Sox are fielding a nearly entirely homegrown lineup.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
At this point, it's not many teams that can do that. The Red Sox at the end of the year were fielding a lineup that included Christian Vasquez, Dustin Pedroia, Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, Benintendi, Bradley Betts in the outfield, and you can even count Hanley Ramirez in part as a homegrown guy, even though he went elsewhere first before coming back to Boston. I think that was really impressive. And if you look at the rotation, really, I mean, it's guys they traded for other than Price. Sale was a guy they used homegrown guys to get. They used a homegrown guy to get Pomerantz. They used homegrown guys, well, somewhat. I mean, they used, in a way, to get Porcello, like Lester to get Cespedes, who got Porcello. So, it's the system. It's the $100 million player development machine that Theo Epstein once spoke of, paying dividends.
It is.
And, you look at the 2018 projected roster, it's kind of tough because you've got Pedroia out. Are they going to replace him with Marco Hernandez? I would love that. That's a homegrown guy, sort of, in that they traded for him. But
while he was in the minors still, though.
While he was in the minors, exactly. But it's, we'll see. First base will be a signing probably, or it'll be Hanley, and the DH will be a signing if they wind up doing that with, say, JD Martinez.
That would be a great signing.
I would love that. I would love that. Although I have a feeling it's going to be Hosmer, but we'll see.
I would not.
We'll see. Yeah. But it's cool to see that come to fruition, because it's not a thing that happens very often. How about you? Last one for you, or if you've got multiple.
No, I have one more. It was really nice to see some international signings again. It's been a few years.
Yeah.
So
at least
it was
you
nice
stay in the system.
Yeah, exactly. So it was nice to see, some big bonuses thrown out to some Latin American talent, and both just for the system's depth and for personal or selfish reasons, because those guys are always interesting to see. And so it's finally some new names to check out during instructs or not instructs this year, but during spring training next year, I guess.
Although it should be said, Ian, it's kind of funny. There's no high-end talent from 2015 in the sense of big bonuses, because even the 5 players who were made free agents by Major League Baseball for the Red Sox, breaking international signing rules, signed for $300,000. They weren't big money signings. In that class, Pedro. Let's start. Brian Mata, Joan Martinez, Pedro Castellanos, Kervin Suarez, Ever Luis Lozada.
It's a good little crew.
The since traded Yisan Coca.
Gregory Santos, who's like 92, 95 with a slider.
Was traded
for the Giants.
Yeah, no, that's for Nunez, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's a good little haul.
It was a good class for
and I think one of those guys, I want to say Guaymaro maybe, was a top 20 GCL prospect.
Sure. Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Okay.
On BA, on Baseball America. I think it was Guaymaro. I'll check quickly.
It would have been Guaymaro, I think, because the Marlins signed him when he became a free agent. I guess they were trying him at catcher, but that ended.
Yeah, they moved him back to the outfield. But yeah, that was impressive.
It was.
I heard that, and I think that was Firefly's sign that she wants us to wrap up.
I think she does. I think she wants some kibble to be flicked so she can go chase it. So, let's wrap up really quick. We have a couple of listener emails, Ian, and then we'll sign off. The first is from friend of the podcast, Matthew Corey, which is in part why I want to make sure we get to these. And it's a subject we've talked about, but he has a question. Now that Tanner Houck has been in the system for some months, what do you think about him? And maybe more interestingly, what have you seen of him that is different / better / worse than what you thought of him coming into the draft? Thanks, and as always, keep up the great work. For me, I guess I would say coming out of the draft because, you only can do so much research going into the draft on guys. And for me, you'll have a better answer for this, but for me, based on what you've told me and what I read before, it seems like he's a Dennis Green guy, and that he is who we thought he was. Does that square with your opinion on him?
Yeah, I would say that there was one inning, which I wrote about, where he looked like that kind of stood out a little. That was more than I was expecting. But other than that, like the delivery, it was what I expected based on the reports that I read.
Meaning what?
The stuff is that it's not great, but it works for him, so you're not going to change it. But the stuff's legit. I saw him up to 97, but he's mostly, 93, 94 is where he's going to pitch, which is it sounds about right. I did like the changeup improvement. I would say if I could identify one thing that improved throughout the year, his changeup was much better at the end of the year compared to this beginning. And I saw him 5 times this year, randomly, which is weird, but his changeup definitely made some improvement over the year, and that was obviously one of the biggest questions was what was going to happen with the changeup. So, yeah, that was definitely encouraging.
Definitely sounds right. And the other email we got was from Russ, and he had a number of questions. I just want to make sure, these questions I think dovetail with a lot of what we've already talked about, but maybe as kind of a lightning round wrap up to our season wrap up. He had some things he wanted to hear about in our season wrap up. So, what 3 minor league players had a surprising season? I would go with Brentz, Chavis, Lynn. Would you throw someone else in there?
I would throw in Jeremy Barfield doesn't count, I guess, but
it was surprising in the sense that he exists.
Yeah, those are probably the 3.
Biggest jump toward having a major league career. Depends what you mean by career. I would say the fact that he's going to play at all, I'd go Lynn. As a potential starter, I'd go Chavis.
Yeah, that's what I would have said too.
Okay. What 3 players had disappointing seasons?
Travis.
Swihart.
Yeah. He's not a prospect, but Swihart, I guess. Yeah, Travis. I would say Dahlbeck through injury. And
because even when he was, quote, healthy, it was disappointing.
I'm trying to think. Is there another one?
It's guys who didn't play. It's Chatham didn't play. Lakins didn't. Lakins was good for a month. Maybe Lakins.
Austin Rye.
At this point, can you call it disappointing?
It was what I expected, but still, he got a ton of money, and he's just, he's struggled.
Relatively a ton of money. He got slot for the 3rd round. I don't know.
Still, though, if you're giving a guy a 3rd rounder, you don't expect him to hit 220, 330, 345 in Salem.
I guess so. I guess that's fair. Fair enough. And who do you think was a prospect that you now have doubts about? Which I guess is kind of dovetails there. To me, the kind of obvious one, probably Dahlbeck.
No, I still think Dahlbeck's a prospect.
Well, I guess that's true. Okay. I guess it depends on what you're calling prospect here.
Yeah. I don't want to pile on, but
yeah, it's not a great question to answer.
No, he's fallen out of the top 60. If you're framing it like I think he was in the 35 range at the preseason, and he's completely out of the top 60. So I don't know. That's a tough one. It's because you don't want to write anyone off.
Yeah, maybe Jake Cozart.
But he had a good second half though. Yeah. So I don't know.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, there's a few guys who may be there. I almost kind of wish we didn't even go that much into it, but fair. And then he. Just to show when the email came in, what do you think is going to happen in the instructional league this year? Nothing, because it didn't happen. And who should we be looking at in the Arizona league? There's 7 guys, so watch them. So, all right, fine. The cat is demanding that we wrap up, so I think we should go ahead and do that.
I concur.
As I learned from last time, we are going to go ahead and not make promises about when we will be back.
We'll record again at some point.
We will, at some point, record another podcast, and it will be magical. All right, Ian, good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it was.
It was fun. All right, everybody, thank you for downloading. For Ian, I'm Chris. Thanks again. We'll be back in your eardrums soon.